Aggregate clause. What does this clause mean and how to use? Let's learn more about it in this video. This clause applies one or more aggregate functions to a collection. Aggregate functions which can be used with this clause are the following 8 functions. Let's first check the syntax of aggregate clause. After that I will explain each function, what does it mean and how it can be used inside a LINQ query. Let's get started. The syntax consists of 2 parts. The first one is the following, which is similar to from clause. So, here I defined a variable that represents the items inside the data source. Here is the data source, what I want to query. This could be an array, a list, rows of data table, etc. The second part is the following. Here I defined a new variable to store the result of the aggregate function. This variable is optional. This means, you can use a variable but you don't have to do. I recommend you to use a variable, and I will also use a variable in all queries. And here is the aggregate function, what I want to use. It can be one of the 8 functions, what I showed you before, for example, count, max, sum, etc. Let's now check the different aggregate functions one by one, and see how to use inside a LINQ query. The first function is all. It returns true if all elements in the collection satisfy a specified condition, otherwise returns false. It can be used as following. As you see, I use the function with a Boolean expression. This function returns true if the condition is true for all items inside the data source. In this case, all numbers are smaller than 8, therefore I will get true as result, and it's of type Boolean. The next function is any. It returns true if any element in the collection satisfies a specified condition, otherwise returns false. It can be used as following. As you see, I use the function with a Boolean expression. This function returns true if the condition is true for at least one item inside the data source. In this case, 3 numbers are greater than 4, therefore I will get true as result, and it's also of type Boolean. The next function is count. It returns the count of elements in the collection. This function returns an integer result. It can be used in 2 different ways. The first way is the following. Here I used empty braces. In this case, I will get the count of all elements inside the sequence. The result of this query will be 7, because the array contains 7 numbers. The second way is the following. Here I define an expression to filter the data before getting the count of the elements. In this case, I will get only the count of the elements that meet the condition. So, the result of this query will be 3, because only 3 numbers meet the condition. The next function is LongCount. It's exact the same function as count function. So, it also returns the count of elements in the collection. There is only one difference between both functions. LongCount returns a result of type long, whereas count function returns a result of type integer. This function can be also used in the same way like count function. Either using empty braces to get the count of all elements inside the collection, or with an expression to get the count of the elements that meet the condition. That's all about this function. The next function is max. It computes the maximum value from the collection, or computes a supplied expression for all elements in the collection. It can be used as following. As you see, I use the function with empty braces. So, we don't need to add an expression. The result of this query will be the following number. As you see, I got the maximum value from the sequence. I can use the same query in this way. Here I added the range variable inside the braces. The result will be the same. So, you can add the variable inside the braces in case you have different variables in the query, and you want to specify what you want to calculate. For example, the following query. Here I have a query for a data table. The table contains different columns, and I want to get the maximum value from a specific column, for example column price. In this case, I define the column from which I want to get the maximum. The next function is min. It computes the minimum value from the collection, or computes a supplied expression for all elements in the collection. It can be used exact in the same way like max function. For example, the following query. The result here will be the following number, which is the minimum value in the sequence. In case we have different variables, we can also define the variable inside the braces, like the example of the data table. Please make sure that you can use both max and min functions for any data type, not only for integer numbers. For example, the following string array. I have different letters in this array. The result here will be the letter D, because it's the minimum value in this sequence. So, here we check the minimum value depending on the alphabetical order of the letters. In summary, you can use both functions for any data type you need, like integer, double, decimal, string, etc. The next function is sum. It computes the sum of all elements in the collection, or computes a supplied expression for all elements in the collection. This function can be also used in the same way like max and min functions. For example, the following query. It returns the following result, which is the sum of the numbers inside the array. The last function is average. It computes the average of all elements in the collection, or computes a supplied expression for all elements in the collection. It can be also used in the same way, like the other functions, max, min, and sum. For example, the following query. The result here is number 3, which is the average of the numbers inside the array. These are the aggregate functions, which can be used with aggregate clause. Let's now check this use case, where I can use aggregate clause. I have following table and I want to get the total sales. This means, I want to multiply the content of columns quantity and price. After that I want to get the sum of all rows. The result should be as following. This is the sum of multiplying both columns of each row. To do that, I can use the following query. First I use the aggregate clause to loop the rows of the table. After that I use the function sum, to get the sum of the following expression. As you see, here I used both columns, quantity and price. I am multiplying both columns. This expression returns a number of type double. As mentioned, I can use the function with empty braces, or with a variable if I have more than one variable in the query. In this case, I have to define which columns I need. This expression returns a number result. Using function sum, I will get the sum of multiplying both columns for all rows. This means, the query returns the following result. In this way I will get the total sales from this table. This example, and all other examples in this video can be written in UiPath inside both assign and invoke code activities. So, I use the clause with only one aggregate function. But sometimes we need to calculate more than one aggregate function. For example, I want to get both maximum and minimum value from an integer array. To do that we have two options. Either we write one query for each aggregate function. This means, one query to calculate the maximum, and one query to calculate the minimum. Or we can write all functions we need in only one query. For example, the following query. Here I used both functions in one query. The result of each function will be stored in a variable. But this type of queries, where I am using more than one aggregate function inside the same query, cannot be written using assign activity. I can write this query only inside invoke code activity. So, the query will be written as following. The result of the query will be stored in the variable aggregate result. This variable has anonymous type. After the query I assign the values I need using this variable. As you see, I am using the variable with the properties, what I calculated inside the query. In this way I can use more than one aggregate function inside one query. I used only two functions, but you can also use more than two functions. To get the value you need, you can use the result variable with the name you used inside the query. In summary, using assign activity you are allowed to use only one aggregate function. Once you want to use more than one aggregate function, you have to use invoke code activity. So, these are the aggregate functions, which can be used with aggregate clause. You should now be able to use these functions in your queries. One last thing you have to learn about aggregate functions, that you can also use them with group by clause. So, they must not only be used with aggregate clause, but also with group by clause. I already explained group by clause in a previous video. The syntax for this clause is the following. To use an aggregate function, for example max function, we have to set it as following. In this way I can calculate the maximum value of the group. Let's check the following example to understand how it works. I have the following table, which consists of different departments. In each department there are some employees. I want to get the sum of salaries for each department. The result should be written in the following output table. In the first column I want to write the department name. And in the second column I want to write the sum of salaries for this department. For that I can use the following query. Using group I am grouping the rows by column department. This means, each group contains the rows of one department. The name of the department is also stored in the variable x key. After that I use the function sum, to get the sum of the column salary of all rows inside the group. This means, I will get each department with the sum of the salaries. At the end I am adding the rows to the output table. Here I use the variable x key, to add the department name to the first column in the output table. The second value is for the second column, total salaries. Here I use the variable salary, what I defined inside the group clause. It contains the sum of the salaries of one department. So, the result of this query will be the following table. As you see, I got only 2 rows, because I only have 2 departments in the input table. And for each department I got the sum of salaries. This is how to use an aggregate function with group by clause. I can use all aggregate functions inside group by clause in the same way, as I use them inside the aggregate clause. That's all you have to learn about aggregate clause.